What happens when one of Hollywood's most cherished actors walks onto a late night stage expecting a warm reunion, only to be ambushed by the very host he thought was a friend? What we saw that night wasn't just uncomfortable TV. It was a gut-punching betrayal of trust. The kind that leaves the air sucked out of the room, the audience frozen, and everyone watching at home wondering, did that really just happen? Before we break down this explosive moment, hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments. Because after what went down on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, people are still arguing over what really happened behind the scenes. Johnny Depp's return to mainstream television was supposed to be triumphant. After years of public trials, canceled contracts, and relentless headlines, this appearance was meant to remind the world of who he really was. An artist, not a headline. The PR team had promised a light, breezy chat, a little nostalgia, a few laughs, the kind of feel-good interview Fallon was famous for. Instead, what unfolded was anything but. Johnny walked out with that unmistakable swagger. Leather jacket slung just right, silver rings gleaming under the lights, his smirk quiet but powerful. The crowd exploded with applause, a wall of warmth he hadn't felt in years. He nodded, smiled, waved. For a moment, everything felt right. Jimmy greeted him like an old friend. "Johnny Depp, everybody!" he boomed. The energy was high, the band played, the stage lit up. And then, slowly, subtly, the air began to shift. It started with the usual stuff. Johnny spoke about his latest indie project, praised the director, shared his love for storytelling. His eyes lit up as he leaned in, talking about what it meant to rediscover the craft without studio politics choking the soul out of it. But Fallon wasn't really listening. The trademark Fallon energy. It started to feel off. His questions got sharper, less playful, more deliberate. Something was coming. Johnny didn't flinch. At first. But the trained eye could see the slight stiffening of the shoulders. The measured pace of his answers. Sensing the trap tightening. Then Fallon leaned in with that shift in tone. The one that seasoned actors hear like a warning bell. "Speaking of connecting with people," he said, voice softer now. "I gotta ask, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but there's been a lot of curiosity about your personal life lately." The room, frozy. The audience, once buzzing, went silent. Fallon danced around the words. "Legal stuff. The news. How you've been handling it." But the intent was clear. This wasn't about promoting a film anymore. This was spectacle. Johnny's smile faded. His fingers tapped once, quiet, calculated, against the armrest. He stared back at Fallon, the crowd still, the tension thick. "I thought we were here to talk about the film," he said evenly, voice edged with warning. Fallon gave one of those fake laughs, the kind that hopes to make a moment disappear. Of course," he stammered. "But people are just curious about the whole story, you know. Everything you've been through. I think they'd really respect your honesty." And that's when it happened. Johnny sat back. The room held its breath. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, controlled, chilling in its precision. "What exactly are you asking me, Jimmy?" And from that moment on, the tone of the interview never recovered. Jimmy fidgeted with his cue cards again, a nervous tic that betrayed just how uneasy he was becoming with the direction of the conversation. But instead of pulling back, he leaned in further, doubling down on whatever angle he thought would make good television. "I'm just saying," he began, trying to sound casual but failing. "There's been a lot of talk about your behavior, your reliability. Whether you're still the same guy who gave us Jack Sparrow and all those iconic roles. People want to know if you're okay." The words hung in the air like a trap, carefully laid. Johnny didn't answer right away. He stared at Jimmy. Unblinking, the silence louder than anything either man could have said. You could see it in Johnny's eyes. The slow realization that this wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush, from someone he once called a friend. "This was supposed to be safe," Johnny said finally, his voice soft, almost inaudible. You were supposed to be someone I could trust. Jimmy shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable now, but too committed to retreat. Look, I'm not trying to attack you, he insisted. I'm just asking the questions people want answers to. That's what we do here. We have real conversations. Johnny leaned forward. The air in the studio changed. It was no longer an interview. It was a reckoning. Real conversations. Johnny repeated slowly, each word landing like a stone. Is that what you call it when you blindside someone on live television? When you take someone's pain and package it for a ratings bump? Jimmy flushed, but he didn't stop. I'm not ambushing you, Johnny. I'm giving you a platform to address the elephant in the room. Your fans deserve to hear it from you. Johnny stood up. The movement was sudden, decisive, and Jimmy recoiled as if he'd been slapped. The crowd froze. The room wasn't breathing. My fans, Johnny said, cold and deliberate, deserve better than watching a man they trusted get baited and gutted for entertainment. Johnny, sit down, come on, Jimmy pleaded, trying to inject some fake charm into his voice. We're just having a talk. Between friends. Johnny let out a laugh. Short, bitter, razor sharp. Friends? He scoffed. Friends don't set each other up on national television. Friends don't promise one thing in private and deliver something else the moment the cameras roll. And they sure as hell don't use someone's trauma as fuel for their monologue. But Jimmy raised his hands like a hostage negotiator. I get that you're upset. I do. But this is what late night is about. We talk about what's real, what's happening in people's lives. Johnny's voice rose, breaking through the tension like a hammer on glass. What's happening in my life, Jimmy, is that I'm trying to rebuild what your industry helped destroy. My career, my reputation, my peace, after years of lies, trials, and vultures circling my name. The cameras rolled, catching every second of the unraveling. Somewhere in the control room, producers were probably screaming. But Jimmy kept going, almost desperate now. And that's exactly why people need to hear from you, Jimmy said, pushing forward. They need to know you're taking responsibility. That you're owning the past, learning, evolving. They want to know you're still someone they can believe in. Johnny's eyes darkened. His voice dropped. Taking responsibility. Learning. What mistakes exactly are you referring to, Jimmy? Go on, say them. Say what you think I've done. Jimmy swallowed hard. The trap he'd set had snapped shut, around himself. Well, you know the stuff with your personal relationships. The legal issues. The rumors from sets. Rumors? Johnny cut in, his voice razor thin. Stories. Told by people who weren't there. Published by outlets who never checked a single fact. And now parroted by someone I thought I could trust. Jimmy had no words left. Just silence. And the weight of a friendship collapsing in front of millions. The tension in the studio was suffocating. You could feel it in the air. Thick, electric, and unrelenting. Audience members exchanged wide-eyed glances, unsure if they were witnessing a career implosion or the most unforgettable moment in late-night history. Some had already raised their phones, recording what they instinctively knew would go viral within the hour. I'm trying to help you here, Jimmy said, but his voice betrayed him. What was meant to sound compassionate came out strained, desperate. This is your chance to control the narrative, to tell your side of the story. Johnny blinked slowly, his jaw tightening. My side of the story. His voice rose, just enough to cut through the silence like a blade. The mask of calm he'd maintained began to slip. My side of the story is that I'm a human being who's been dragged through hell. Who's watched his name torn apart by tabloids, by studios, by people who never knew me but had something to gain by tearing me down. I've lost work. I've lost relationships. And now you, someone I thought I could trust, are sitting here asking me to bleed for ratings. Jimmy opened his mouth to respond, but Johnny wasn't done. Not even close. I came here tonight because I believed we had history. I thought I could trust you not to turn this into a circus. I was wrong. Johnny, please, Jimmy said, leaning forward, palms raised. His voice cracked with urgency. I'm not your enemy. I'm giving you a platform to clear the air. Clear the air. Johnny's laugh was dry hollow. You want to clear the air? Fine. Let's clear it. You invited me here under false pretenses. You sold this as a conversation between friends, and instead you're trying to turn my life into a segment. You're no better than any other vulture in this industry. The words hit like punches. Jimmy visibly deflated, shoulders sagging, mouth slightly agape. The look in his eyes said it all. He knew. He'd misread the room, misjudged the moment, and miscalculated Johnny Depp. But instead of retreating with grace, Jimmy made the worst possible move. I think you're overreacting, he said weakly. This is what interviews are, man. This is what people expect when they see Johnny Depp. And that was the moment it all collapsed. Johnny's voice dropped its restraint. Overreacting, he thundered, his tone sharp and unforgiving. You think I'm overreacting to being ambushed on national television by someone I once called a friend. Jimmy raised a hand as if to calm him. But Johnny cut him off with a simple wave, dismissive and final. You know what, Jimmy? You're right about one thing. People do expect something when they tune in to see Johnny Depp. They expect honesty. They expect someone who's real. What they don't expect is a host who uses trauma as a punchline, who sells out trust for 10 seconds of viral fame. The room went still. Even the band sat motionless, instruments silent, unsure whether to play Johnny off or just sit in the awkward devastation, now hanging in the air. Then Johnny turned, not to Jimmy but to the camera. To those watching at home, thank you. For standing by me. For seeing past the noise. For remembering that behind the headlines, behind the gossip, is a human being. And for understanding that some things, some A-lines, should never be crossed. Not for laughs. Not for laughs. Not for anything. He turned back to Jimmy, and the look in his eyes was no longer fury. It was disappointment. A's for you, Johnny said. His voice low and unnervingly calm. I hope whatever you thought you were going to gain from this, I hope it was worth it. I hope the retweets, the likes, the headlines, you get all of it. Because you've just lost something far more valuable. Jimmy sat frozen, pale, completely deflated. His usual charm, the smirking confidence, the crowd, pleasing energy, had vanished. All that remained was a man who had just realized he may have made the biggest mistake of his career. Johnny, wait, he stammered. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jimmy stammered, but even to his own ears, the words felt hollow. I never meant for this to go this way, he said quietly. I thought we could just have an honest conversation about everything. Johnny raised an eyebrow, incredulous. An honest conversation, he echoed. Is that what you call lying to my publicist about the topics you'd cover? Is that what you call promising a light interview about my film and then blindsiding me with an interrogation about my personal life? The audience sat frozen. This wasn't a comedy bit. This wasn't scripted tension. It was something raw, unfiltered. A friendship was unraveling on live television, and millions were watching. I was trying to help you, Jimmy said, almost pleading. I thought if we addressed everything head-on, we could move past it. Johnny tilted his head slightly, a look of something close to pity crossing his face. No, he said. You thought you could ambush me. You thought you could push me into breaking down on your show. Hand you the kind of viral moment that would have. Everyone talking about Jimmy Fallon tomorrow morning. That's not. I didn't. Jimmy tried. But Johnny raised a hand. Let me finish, Johnny said firmly. His voice had the weight of someone who'd been quiet too long and had finally reached the limit. You thought you could exploit my situation, my pain, my struggles. You thought whatever trust existed between us was just another tool to extract something no other host could get. And the worst part isn't even the ambush. Johnny's eyes darkened. The worst part is that you're pretending it was noble. That this was for me? That you were doing me a favor by cornering me on live television and demanding I justify my existence to your audience? I never asked you to justify anything, Jimmy said weakly. Didn't you? Johnny snapped. When you brought up my reliability, my mental state, every gossip rag headline, what exactly did you want from me? What answer would have been enough for you? Jimmy opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The man known for his quick wit and effortless charm now sat speechless, outmatched by honesty he didn't see coming. You know the really tragic thing, Johnny said, his voice suddenly soft, conversational. I respected you. I actually thought you were different, that you understood the line between entertainment and exploitation. Silence. Thick and unrelenting. You could hear the low hum of the studio lights, the whisper of air conditioning, the audience holding its breath. I was wrong, Johnny said. And that's on me, for trusting someone who clearly values ratings over relationships. He stood, slowly walking toward the edge of the stage. Johnny, please, don't leave like this, Jimmy called after him. His voice cracked with desperation. We can fix this. We can talk, figure it out. Johnny paused, then turned back, eyes heavy with something far deeper than anger. Fix this. Jimmy, you can't fix trust once it's broken. You can't say what's already been said. And you can't undo choosing your ass show over our friendship. Jimmy's voice dropped. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Johnny gave a small nod. You did. And maybe that apology would mean something if it had come before you spent 10 minutes justifying your mistake instead of admitting it. He looked out at the audience. Thank you all for being here tonight, he said, sincere. I'm sorry your evening got hijacked by whatever this was supposed to be. Then he turned back to Jimmy one last time. And Jimmy, next time you want to ambush someone for content, maybe pick someone who hasn't already been through hell. Maybe pick someone who doesn't think of you as a friend. With that, Johnny Depp walked off. The Tonight Show stage. Jimmy sat frozen, staring at the empty space Johnny had left behind, his miscalculation echoing louder than any applause ever could. The cameras kept rolling. The band didn't play. The audience didn't clap. There was only silence and the weight of a moment that couldn't be undone. What really drove Jimmy to make such a reckless decision that night? Was it pressure from the network? A desperate grab for relevance? Or was it something deeper? Subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think really happened behind this televised betrayal.